Hello, hello, is the sound working? Hello, hello, is the sound working? Alright, cool. Alright, we're going to start. Alright, so this talk is going to be in English, so for the guys that are on YouTube, and I hope that all of you guys can understand English. So let's start. Welcome to this talk in Montreal for the MUG. I am Anthony Carmona. I am an environment prop artist. This talk is going to be in English. And today I'm going to talk to you about Allegorithmic and Unity, how both of them work and how you can implement some of the features of in Montreal, algorithmic tools to Unity. I am Anthony Carmona. So a little bit about me. I am a freelance environment artist, and over the last year I've been working with a studio in France called Midgard Studio, and they are developing right now a game called Edge of Eternity. And how you can implement some of so let's get into the subject. You may have noticed as Unity 5 came out that there is a new lighting model in Unity 5. It is called the PBR. PBR is more realistic, and wait, I think I actually messed up something. I know it's worse. Okay, so PBR is more realistic because it is a more realistic rendering of materials, because it encompasses new features that you didn't have in version 4.0. So it is a standardized production of textures, which means that every texture that you will make in Substance or any other package, and that will be made for PBR, will be rendered absolutely perfectly in the engine. So you don't need to tweak your textures like you were doing in version 4.0. So this shading model is based on the real physical properties of real-life materials, which means that you can discriminate between metals and insulators. We'll talk about that a bit later. We also talk about the conservation of energy, and we'll see that this works with every type of lighting. So we'll start with PBR. What is it? So PBR means physically based rendering, and to explain what it does, I have to do a little bit of physics. So don't worry, it's going to be quick and painless. There's no math involved. It is just how it works. So imagine you got an apple in front of you, and this apple is red. So how does light work in real life? You got the sun that lights the apple, and the light of the sun is white. And this white color is actually made of all the colors of the rainbow. So you got green, blue, yellow, whatever. And every ray that is touching the apple is going to be either scattered, reflected, or diffused into the apple. So what happens when you look at this apple is that the white rays of the sun will hit the apple, and all the rays will be reflected outward. So none of So when you look at this apple, all the rays will be absorbed by the apple except for the red one that will touch your retina, and so that's why you see that the apple is red. And all And now for the PBR, the new thing about it is that it discriminates between the dielectric, the insulator, and the conductor material. So the difference between the two is that the dielectric absorbs and diffuses light, and the light that is not absorbed by this material, pretty much like the apple, is giving the color to the object. It's called the diffuse map. And for instance, for these kind of materials, you got wood, sand, paper, rubber, anything that doesn't have any metal in it. The second type is the conductor material, and these do not absorb light. Everything is reflected off the surface, because if you want to enter the physics of it, the atoms are too close together, so the light cannot be absorbed by the material. So all the colors that you will see on a metal will be dictated by the specular color, so by the reflection. And metal materials are gold, silver, iron, and others. So you got copper, you got everything that is metallic. Then one more thing that PBR does compared to the old version is it conserves the energy. So it means, basically, it's very easy. It means that every light that touches a material cannot be outputted more than it receives. Basically, if you have a light of 1 that touches a material, the material cannot render 1.1. It cannot render over 100%. So that's why when you increase the smoothness of your material, the more you go to something that is very shiny, the darker it becomes. Alright, so this is the non-PBR rendering. This is the old model, so it was called the Lambert model. It was implemented by Mr. Lambert in 1977, and it was a very light model because the computers at this time were not that powerful. You know, it was the aim of this model was to be very fast, so the computer doesn't chug. And unfortunately, it's not physically accurate, so that means that the artists, when they made textures, they had to think a lot about the light conditions in the game beforehand. They had to do little tweaks, go back and forth between Photoshop and the engine to, you know, tweak the textures, because some textures weren't working in some environments and some weren't working at all.
Unfortunately, it's not physically accurate.
And so it does not conserve energy. So it happens sometimes, you know, that in the old games you got some objects that render more light than it receives. So you got these kind of objects that are too whitish, and there is no Fresnel effect. The Fresnel effect is like a reflection of 100%. It's like when you watch. Like when you see outside, you got the glasses of the building. When you look at them in front of you, you can see through it. But if you go on the side, it becomes completely opaque, and you only got the reflection of it. That's called the Fresnel effect. And the last thing that the old model didn't do was it hadn't any distinction between metal and insulator. So now we enter the nice realm of PBR. You can see the difference between a traditional shader on the left and a PBR shader on the right. You can see that the map looks a bit more realistic. And when you got a metal that is rendered in engine, it looks really, really amazing.
Any distinction between metal and insulator?
Alright, so you may have noticed when you open Unity 5.0 that the shaders have changed. There is something new about them. There's a lot of new content that you can do with it, and it is because they ditched the old legacy shaders and they changed them with the new standard shader. And these standard shader, you got two types, and it's the two different workflow of Unity. It's called metalness and specular. We're only going to talk about metalness today because specular is a bit more complicated. It involves one more map, but it's not I mean, you can look it up if you want.
Legacy shaders.
So metalness, metalness workflow works with first an albedo map. It's like the color of your object, but there's no light information in it. So you don't have any highlights, you don't have any shadow in it. You only have the color. So basically, if I take my apple, I won't do any, I mean, I won't put in it any occlusion or highlights. It will only be the color of the apple itself. Then you got the normal map. The normal map is the surface detail. It's like faking the surface of an object. So if you got in a game you got a dirt road or something like that, you don't want to model each grain that you got on the floor or each little pebble. You have a normal map to do that. It fakes the surface of the object. It gives you some kind of tangible effect. Then you got the metal. So this is the new thing with PBR. The metal is a map on the grayscale from 0, which is dark black, to 1, which is white. And black means no metal, and 1 means all metal. So it allows you to make a material going from non-metal to metal with just a slider. And then you got the smoothness. The smoothness is what we call the roughness of the object. So let's say I've got a mirror, and my smoothness will be 1, so it will be white in Unity. And if I have something very rough, very matte, it will be black. Non-metal to metal with just. And these two last maps are packed in Unity, so you can conserve space. What we call the roughness of the object. All right, so now we're going to talk about Substance Designer. Substance Designer is a software developed by Allegorithmic, and it is quickly becoming a new staple in the game industry. So people are preferring this software to the old Photoshop. I will show you what it does and how it works. The pictures that you can see here are actually all made with Substance Designer. And the really cool thing about Substance Designer is that it is completely procedurally generated. So it involves no photo. So we're going to jump into Substance Designer. So this is the software. I'm going to create a new package. And in this I'm going to create a new substance. So a substance is a material. It's like the composition of all my maps: albedo, normal, smoothness, metalness, height, any map that I may need. So I'm going to call this tiles, and we're going to have a bit of fun with it. And in this, so this is the interface of the software. I got here a cube, which is black for now. Here I've got a view of my texture, the Explorer, and a set of noises, patterns, filters, blending modes, blurs. Basically, this software is a Photoshop but visually based. You have nodes that you can connect to each other to render texture. So you will create a full texture, a full material from scratch with that software. So let me show you how PBR works in example. So we're going to start by creating a uniform color. I can choose my color. So let's say I'm gonna take something green like this. And if you see I've got my outputs here. So this is my base color, my albedo. This is my normal map, my roughness map, and my metallic. So if I plug this into my base color, you will see that my cube becomes green. If I create another uniform color, and this time I make it grayscale, and I start playing around with the roughness, you'll see that now that it is black, it is completely reflective. So you may have noticed that it's inverted to Unity. Unity is the other direction. So white is fully reflective, black is non-reflective. So if I start playing around with the slider, you may see that the microsurface of my cube starts to become more and more matte until it has no specular highlight.
You may have noticed that it's inverted.
And now we're going to play with the metallic.
So white is.
So black is no metal and white is full metal. If I start dragging this up, you will see the surface that will become more and more metallic until it is full metal. So if I put like something a bit more white, you can see that it really behaves like a metal.
So black is no metal.
And then we got the normal map. Normal map is for faking a surface. So here I got a black and white node, but I create a normal node that will create a normal map instantly. And if I drag this in to the normal output, I will get this. You see, it changes the surface of the object. So these are the basic blocks of Substance Designer, and now we can play around with some of the built-in patterns, noises, and filters that we've got in the software, and we can create some pretty cool stuff. So let's go back from 0, and we're going to make a tile pattern.
Changes the surface of the object.
So I'm going to take a tile generator.
So these are the basic blocks.
You can see here on the 2D view that I have like
with some of the
blocks that looks like tiles, and here I've got all my parameters. And I can change pretty much anything I want. So I can add more tiles, less tiles. I can increase the scales of each tile or decrease it. I can change the interstice, change the offset, and play around with a mask. Pretty much anything you want to do. And the cool thing about you, those who are programmers here, will have a lot of fun with that, because all of these options are can be exposed, so you can play around with them once you export the file to Unity. So it means that your texture will be still changeable into Unity. So I'm going to show you that a bit later. So let's say we want to create some tiles. So we're going to start off with that. I'm going to make several generators. So I have 2, which are exactly the same, but I'm going to make a little difference between the 2 of them. This one will have more variation.
So I'm going to show you that.
So this plays between black and white. I'm just going to check the YouTube if there is any comments there.
We're going to start off with that. I'm going to make several generators.
We got problems.
So I have 2, which are exactly the same, but I'm going to make a little difference between the 2 of them.
I'm sorry, guys.
This one will have more variation.
Okay, YouTube, tell me if the sound is better. Alright, so I'm playing around with the variation, and I want to make a mask out of that so I can have some broken up tiles. So I'm going to use, I don't know if you guys use Photoshop. Have you ever used Photoshop? Yes? You know what a histogram scan is? A histogram? No? Yeah. So I'm going to create an histogram scan, and what it does, it's that it would change the contrast between each of the blocks I've got. So I can make it like this. So I have different blocks that will be broken and others that will work. So if you take that and you create a normal map and plug it here, you can see that the tiles are differently surfaced. But this is not really great because I don't have, you know, a smooth curve on that. So I'm going to use a blur. And now I can blur this out and make something that looks a bit more like a tile that has, you know, some kind of taper on top. I'm just gonna check the sound if it works. Yeah, better. Cool. All right. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this. I have another file that is ready, and I can show you pretty much anything that you want to see. That is the real cool features of Substance Designer, because making a material like this can take up to 5 hours to make something that looks really cool. But we're going to play around and have, let's say I'm going to make different colors for the tiles. Blend. So this is a blend node. It kind of blends 2 maps together. So I'm going to use this as a mask. So you got here foreground, background, and opacity. This is my mask. And if I put this, if I put in a color on top, you can see that all my tiles are yellow. And if I put in a, let's say, a noise, clouds, clouds on the bottom, you'll see that everything that is black will take the color of the clouds. So let's create a gradient map for this, and here. There we go. But the cool thing about a gradient map is that you can always change the color of it. And you can pick a gradient, you drag it on your image, you drop it, and it will change all the colors of your gradient. So now your grout looks more like a grout. And we're going to use an HSL node, which is a hue, saturation, and lightness. And I can turn down the color to have something more grayish. Okay, so now we have this. And I want to make my grout pop out. So I'm going to take this pattern, invert it. So I have my grout showed up in white, and I'm going to blend it. I'm going to make some space here so you can see better. Yep, come back here. Alright. I'm going to, oh, okay. So I take this, and on top I will use my clouds that I've made here. Actually, I'm gonna take this one, which is black and white, and you can see that now only my grout has the clouds pattern. And if I put it here, I will have a normal map that is created with the with only the grouts. So I can increase it, and I will blend the two of them. And now I have my grout with more details. Oh, I want to blend this here and that here. Okay, so now it excludes the it excludes what I don't want. Okay, here we go. That's a bit better. And you know, it's a very iterative process, so you can go back and forth, go back to your other nodes, explore and have fun with it. And you know, after a while of just doodling around with the software, you can get some pretty decent results. One thing that I wanted to show you is the fact that it is procedurally generated. So if I check here, I have my number X and Y, but you see that since I have two generators like this, I want them to be linked, so the both of them work together. So I can go here and expose the parameter and select number X, and here I go here too, number X, and here number Y. Like this. if I double click on my substance, you can see that I have parameters here. So these are the parameters that I just exposed. And if I drag it, I have a slider here. If I drag it, the two of them will start working together. And these options that I have here can be implemented into Unity, so you can change all your texture during playtime. So let's cut to the example. I'm going to show you what it looks like in Engine. So I made this little scene where I have a tank that I'm going to show you in Substance Painter. And I have this floor here. And yesterday I've done the same tile texture, but I had a little bit more time. So this is what it looks like. Broken. Okay. Sorry about that. Yeah, there we go. So this is what it looks like. This is my ceramic tiles that I've made yesterday. So this is made with the same software, just I had a little bit more time and I wasn't so stressed. And if you double click on this, you got your ceramic tiles, your material. And here you can see that you have a set of different parameters, and you can play around with them just like I did in Substance Designer. So if I set it to 6, you will see that my texture will change to something with six sides. Right now it's generating. There we go. I got 6 sides. And if I want to play around and break some tiles that I have here, whoops, not this, come back. Alright. If I want to break some tiles, I can go into the destruction I've made and crank up the missing tiles. And it will appear in a few seconds. There we go. I got some missing tiles now. And I want to change the color of my tiles. Just change the hue. And there we go. We got some blue tiles. And the real cool thing about Substance Designer is that the file that I've exported, this SBACR, you can generate several different materials just with the one I have here. So if I click here, you can see on top that I have a list of my materials. And if I click plus, it will create another one that I can take here and drag on my other wall. And I have my other tiles set here with the same exact options that I can change. I'm going to check just a minute. Okay, that's better. Alright, so this is Substance Designer. It is really powerful to make any kind of procedurally generated texturing. So if, for instance, you want to have like a grass floor with more or less clumps, more flowers, less flowers, you can just link it to a parameter and switch it from 1 to 0, and you can do pretty much anything you want and generate as many variants of your texture in a few seconds. So for an artist like me, a software like this will speed up my process by 10,000. It will just take a few hours to set up a good material, go back and forth with my art director, see what he likes, see what he doesn't like, and once everything is exported, you just have to give it to another artist, like a level artist. He will just have to play with the texture, export the texture he wants, and that's it. He has a full bank of textures that he can play around and set up at his will. It doesn't have to go back to you to change it, which is a really cool feature. Now we're going to switch to Substance Painter. Substance Painter is more of a Photoshop but in 3D. So you can paint directly on your models.
we're going to paint this model here that I have this water tank. Let's just wait for it to open. Alright, so you can see the interface is pretty much the same. It's the same color scheme, and actually the software uses the power of Substance Designer. So you will see the full advantages of having the two software. Let's open up the asset I've got. Okay, so this is my tank, and you have a layer stack just like in Photoshop. And the really cool thing about it is that you paint the full material on your model. You don't have to paint normal, then the base color, then the roughness. Everything is done at the same time. You can see here that your layer stack is stacked with height, roughness, metallic, normal, ambient occlusion, and emissive. So let's start off with a fill layer. Oh, also, I have to tell you that everything in this software is non-destructive. So if you want to go from 2K textures to 1K textures, you can do it. And if you want to go from these 1K texture back to 4K texture, the computer will just compute the whole thing and output a full 4K resolution texture without any artifacts or you know, actual texture problem. Everything will be rebaked for you automatically. So I'm going to create this, and you can see here that I got materials, and we're going to take a plastic matte blue and we're going to drop it into our material. And now you see that my tank is all blue, and I can change the roughness just like in Substance Designer. So make it glossy or matte, and I can change also the metallic. So I'm going to take one of the maps I have prepared in Substance Designer prior to this talk. Metal spotted, and I'm going to import it directly into Substance Painter. So you can see that even though everything is procedurally generated or non-destructive, I can always use bitmaps to paint my models. So if you have an artist that has painted something very, very specific for your game, you can always implement it into Substance Painter and paint with it. So I'm going to take this. This is my AO. I'm going to drop it here. This is my, what is it, base color. Drop it here. My metallic, my normals. You can see that now it has these little bumps in the model, and my roughness. There we go. So we have something that resembles more of an inox kind of metal. But you see that everything is gray now, so I want other materials for the rest of my tank. So what I can do is create a black mask that will hide everything, and I can select the polygons of my mesh or the UV islands of my mesh to paint it with the materials that I've made in this tag. So if I click here, only this UV island will take the color, and so on. So I can do it like this. I can do it with the full object, but you see that this core that I want painted something else is also painted. So there is a third way, which is when I bake this model for Substance, I had what they call an ID map, which is here, and this ID map discriminates the different materials that I will paint. So when you bake your high poly to low poly, you can create this with materials inside Maya or Blender of 3ds Max, and when you bake it, you have these as a painted map onto your mesh, and you can pick the color of these to make your materials. So let's go back to the full material, and we're going to add a color selection and pick the color to take this. And yeah, since I have this, I have to clear it first. There we go. Color selection. There we go. Now you see that only the body of my tank is in the right color and the cork is still black. So I can now create a new folder and a new layer, and this will be rubber. So I can go to my Smart Materials. Smart Materials is a collection of generators and different maps that are created by the guys at Allegorithmic, and you can, it's a bit more of a complex material than just the simple materials that you have that are created with Substance Designer. So you can take this one and drag it into the folder. And now it will process the thing. It makes my full body black again, and I can create a mask just like earlier. Color selection, pick a color, click on it, and bam. Now it is rubber. Well, also you can create effects like dust, rust. You can create bumps on your model. You can paint weld. If you want to weld some parts of the model like this. Here I have this part that is not very sexy, and I want to make some weld marks. I can always go to the Allegorithmic website, which is called Substance Share, which is a platform where people share their own substances. And I can have some more materials, paint brushes, physics paint, and it's really complete. You can do pretty much anything you want once you have discovered this website. So I have downloaded from this website a weld mask. I'm going to drop it into my alphas, and now what I will do is that I will paint welds onto my model. So I'm going to create. I'm going to make this. I'm going to create a folder for that. So copy mask, black mask, press into mask. All right. And I create a new layer on top of that, which is a paint layer. So you can paint pretty much like in Photoshop. So if I want to paint on this model, I can. And I'm going to take my weld paintbrush, and now I can paint weld. But this is white. I don't like white. I only want the normal information of that. I don't want to change the color of my model. So I can always disable the color, disable the roughness, the metal, the normal, and only keep the height. And so this is a slider that allows me to make it inward or outward. So if I paint here, you can see that I have bumps inward, and if I paint here, you can see that I have bumps outward. So now I can start and have fun with the welding tool. And paint my welds where it should be. So you see, you can either go very large scale with your painting and just apply big materials that will cover the full model, or you can go really in depth and make all the very small details. And let's say I'm happy with that. I'm going to make something more worn out. I'm going to make this metal a bit more worn out. So I have a collection of effects that are provided by Allegorithmic, and where is it? Yeah, okay. So I can create effects on top of my metal, like this filter, and I can change how the metal will react. Okay, why don't you work? I'm sorry, I've got a few issues with that. Okay, that's why. Filter. There we go. And now I have like a brushed effect on my model. I can have something more dotted, grainy, and I'm going to take this one, which is the rough kind of metal. And I can always go and play around with the normal of this, the normal information, and reduce it so I have something a bit more, you know, like this, a bit more subtle. So this is pretty much everything there is to say about Painter. There is also a particle effect. So if I go here and I create a new layer and I go burn, I use a new material, something like rust, with my particle tool. You can see that I will paint particles directly on the model. So that can be really satisfying when you have to destroy your model in like 5 minutes. You made something really beautiful for 5 hours and now you destroy it. You can also make rain. You can make veins like organic patterns. It is pretty crazy what you can do with that. Yeah, and you got also smart masks that allow you to, let's say, make dust, dirt, edge damages, rust. It's really complete. So let's say, for instance, I'm going to make some damage on my metal. So I'm going to only make a height map of that, like very low. I'm not sure it's going to work, but we'll try. I'm going to create a black mask of that, and I'm going to drag this into my mask. Yeah, and you can see that now I have some destruction directly on my model. And if I go on the filter of the mask, I can play around and make it more blurry, less blurry. Change the texture. I can even input custom grunges, custom patterns. You can redo whatever you want with that software, and you can paint pretty much any model from a character to a gun to a car to an animal. If there is no limit, you can paint skin. You can paint. You can even paint like the freckles on your character directly into that. You don't have to do it in ZBrush. You can do it here. You can make your normal information directly in this software on the model. You don't have to model it into the high poly anymore. So, like if I take this and I select only my normal, like this, and yeah. And I use the projection on my model. I drag this into my, I don't see it. Yeah, I drag this into my normal. You can see that now I can project a normal directly on my model. So I'm going to turn this off, and I'm going to paint the normal information on my model. So you can see now the real advantage of this tool. You can paint all your normal information, like the very small details that you cannot do in high poly that would take you hours to make. You just have to have a stamp, and you just stamp it on your model, and in 2 minutes you have something that looks as good as if you spent 5 hours on it. So I'm going to cut the demo here and show you what it looks like directly into Unity. So I've made my own custom lighting on this scene. So I'm using a lot of GI on that. The GI is pretty high, so I'm not sure that you will be able to use that into a game, because your game would be pretty tough. For instance, just around this thing I have four reflections, 2 lights, free spotlights. It's getting pretty tough. And these planes are used with the GI, so I have my radiosity that will bounce, my rays will bounce onto my model. So you can see that I have these nice orange highlights on my model. So if you go into the game view, you can see that my planes are not here anymore because they are hidden in another layer. But even though they are hidden, I can always see the specular highlights on that. So it makes some really cool rim lights, and it is very good if you have to showcase a model with Unity. Actually, I never used Unity for showcasing before. I was using Marmoset Toolbag or Unreal. But now that I see how easy it is to set up a good lighting and a good environment for your props for showcasing, I'm going to use Unity because it looks really good, really fast. They made some real efforts on the shading and the lighting recently. So yeah, I'm going to set this to another layer, to hidden, and now I only have my full tank with no wall behind. I can go to my camera and start the script that I have set up. Oh, by the way, I have to tell you that this is vanilla Unity. There is just the post processes that they give out with the standard assets of the project. That's it. There's nothing more. There is no SEGI. There is no custom shaders. No custom post processes. And now you can see the model. This is what it looks like after. This took me 4 hours to make this full scene with the 2 props painted, the floor, and the kind of circle that you put your things around. 5 hours for all this. It's pretty fast. If I had to do this on Photoshop like the old way, it would take a lot of time. So that wraps up my presentation. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, feel free. Yes?
Question. In terms of performance, when you export the procedural material, I guess that like whenever you copy them and make modifications, then it's gonna at load time to sing or something like that. It's gonna have to create like at runtime multiple textures. But is there a way also to export this texture?
Okay. So for YouTube, the question was, is there a way to export the textures from Substance Designer directly as bitmaps? Yes, there is a way. Actually, if you open up Substance Designer,
because I can imagine that one of the advantage of the other way is when you put all those masks and special effects, then
well, the big advantages of having the SBSR, the proprietary format of that, is that it's very light. It weighs only 30 kilobytes instead of 3 or 4 megabytes per map. But the drawback is that the CPU will have to compute the whole thing each time that you start the game, or each time that you make a modification on your texture. So you can always output the maps from the substance. So I'm going to open up.
if you added like multiple masks and
Yes.
effects, so how does that translate to textures or material? Is it still just one file and that's it?
Yeah, it will be one file. If you export it as a map, it will only be one map, and you won't have any access to the sliders. So this is the one you have in the project here. You can see that the graph is a bit bigger. It looks messy right now, but it is actually very simple. You just have to read from left to right, and you just have to spend like 10 minutes trying to figure out what I did. Open up the different nodes, and you will understand pretty clearly. It's scary at first, but it's actually pretty easy. So for the questions, if you right-click here on your graph, you can export the outputs as bitmaps. And the outputs that you got on the right, they are listed here, and you can just take them and click Save All, and it will export it with the format that you want. So it can be PSD, or it can be JPEG, whatever you want.
And then the textures are going to be inversed for
In what?
So the slider for smoothness, roughness are going to be inversed?
Yes, you have to invert them by hand.
Okay.
So like here on my roughness, so this is the roughness for Substance Designer. If I want to switch it to a roughness for Unity, I just have to create a new node and call it invert grayscale, and it will invert my map, and that's it. My output map will be inverted. It's as easy as that. And if you want to go really crazy, you can change that, expose it, click invert, and now you have it into the options, and you don't even have to go back there. You just have to open the option and click true or false, and you can change it. Yes?
When you in Substance, you exported it as
SAR.
SBSAR.
SBSAR.
Okay. And then in Unity, you just load that.
Yeah, you just drag the SBSAR directly into Unity, and that works. Any other question? Nope. All right. Well, I think that's it. Thank you for listening to me. I hope that I didn't bore you. And I'll see you next time. Thank you. And thank you, YouTube.